Since I got hit with about a dozen questions before I even started today, I don't think that there'll be any lack for Q&A, but let me just give you an update on where I think we are with some of the bigger issues, and then throw it open to questions.
What is the biggest issue?
It's not for questions yet.
Hold on.
Let's let him talk.
I'll stop. The one I think is the biggest issue is my first topic, which is going to be hiring a new town administrator. We are today. We have gone through the first round of applicants for an interim. We're going to be interviewing a handful of candidates on Saturday, and from that we hope to have a shorter list of candidates that we'll interview in public in 2 weeks and be in a position to offer a job to. I can say that every one of them has experience as a town administrator and experience working in the Commonwealth. And as the first round of hiring an interim, I think that's important because you want somebody who can hit the ground running, because there is really no time for a learning curve, because you're really asking that person to be keeping the chair warm, so to speak, until you hire the full-time permanent person. So I'm hopeful that we will have by September an interim in place that will be working under the old job or the current job description for the town administrator, and will be focusing primarily on the day-to-day things that need attention, like purchasing, making sure the budget is the items we have control over are being handled properly, dealing with personnel matters as they arise, and also supervising the clerical and maintenance staff in town hall that work under the Board of Selectmen. So that's the immediate goal, because in the absence of a town administrator to delegate responsibilities to, for the most part, some of the day-to-day work is going to fall to individual members of the board, and that's awkward at best. We did designate the purchasing authority that the town administrator has to George Foster, so that he and the town treasurer are required, particularly under our new procurement process, to sign off on all purchase orders over $500. Second thing is, immediately following this, we will begin the search for a full-time town administrator. And as many of you know, I chaired a committee called the Ad Hoc Committee, and we put forth a bylaw recommendation, which is in fact something that had already been before the town meeting before, clarifying the roles and powers of the town administrator vis-a-vis the Board of Selectmen. And that was because we had a job description for the town administrator that wasn't backed up by the town bylaws. And that was because when the job description and contract, and Gary would know this better than me, when the prior contract was negotiated and the job description was negotiated, it was assumed by that board that there would be a bylaw adopted by the town meeting that would tie the whole thing together. So I think it's a point in time for us to look at the job description, look at the type of person that we want, and the type of role that we need them to play. And we started that with a public meeting, not this past week, but the week prior to this, where we brought in department heads and committee chairs and asked them to say what traits would they like to see in a town administrator. And I think that some of the traits that they would like to see more of were communication and relationships among the department heads and elected officials. Some of the elected boards, particularly the planning board, wanted to see a closer working relationship with their entity. The next step for us is to take a look at the job description that exists, take a look at the requirements that we have, take a look at the bylaw that was passed at the town meeting this past May, and put together not only a job description, but a wish list in terms of the types. You could find a lot of folks that fit a job description. You find as far as a smaller list of folks that fit what you're looking for in terms of the type of leadership and the type of skills that you want to see applied to that job description. So we've got that ahead of us. The other thing that's facing us, and I'm glad that Mike has joined us, because I know you've had a couple of meetings this week which I wasn't able to attend, but is the the issue that we've got a school that, at least to today, is uninhabitable. That there is nothing that if school were to start tomorrow, we wouldn't have a place to send our middle school kids. And that is, that's quite frankly a pretty frightening situation, because we are looking at a number of variables that could trigger a number of scenarios for the school. What everyone is hoping for, and it's been done in other communities, is that through a combination of cleaning and ventilation and other measures, that you can bring the PCB, airborne PCB level in the hot spots in that school down to a level that's safe for a 10-year-old. There are different levels of tolerance that children have to airborne PCBs, and in fact that the younger middle school students have less of a tolerance than the upper middle, at least according to EPA standards. So I think it's 300 parts, whatever that is, that we have to get it down to in that. And it's not we, because it's really the school department and the companies that they're working with. But I think for the town, we eventually will have to decide how and how much we're able and willing to pay for the various scenarios. What's going to happen is there's been a lot of confusion about cost, and in part is because I think there is not a definitive cost tied to this. But I know the superintendent has relied heavily on numbers supplied to him by the town of Lexington, which had a very similar situation. We're successful in remediating this to an acceptable level. The problem that Lexington confronted, and I don't know this firsthand, was in order to get state aid for this problem, it was going to be more financially attractive to them to build a new school, because they were going to get little to no help from the Mass School Building Authority in trying to fix the problem that they had. They would get money from the Mass School Building Authority to build a new school. And
yeah, that's horrible.
And in the town of Westport, it's the most recent formula we've got from them is 46 cents on the dollar that we get reimbursed for a construction project. So it's not an inconsequential, and if you're looking at a situation where you may have to take out all of your floors, all of your ceilings, some of your exterior work, and do soil removal. Am I missing anything, Mike? Those are all items
removal and encapsulation
of some of these surfaces. Those costs start approaching the cost of, not to mention the fact that that school had pre-existing problems with mold and some I think design flaws that have plagued that school for a number of years. So we're not starting with a pristine new school that has to be remediated. We're starting with a 40-year-old school that had dampness issues and I guess mold issues throughout its life, has serious ADA compliance issues in terms of handicapped accessibility, and would have been a candidate for substantial renovation and replacement before this happened. So I think that's another major issue. And the third one, just I know you're all going to love to talk about it. I think it's time to discuss the structure of town government. I helped start a committee last year called the Ad Hoc Committee on Government Structure. It was basically to take a look at the Barrows report, to look at the various audit reports that have been done in the town, to look at some studies that have been done of other communities, and to say, for a town of 15,000 people with a $30 million budget, is this the best way to run the business? And some of us think that we could be running a slightly more professional business if we made some changes to the way town is constructed. One step that happened was the DOR published a report, a review of the town's financial systems back in February. It's probably has begun gathering dust at a very early age. We need to find a reason to get that thing off the table, off the shelf, and onto the table for discussion. That gets to the problem of the challenge of a highway surveyor. The district attorney weighed in on it yesterday and said that he did not believe that it was within the jurisdiction of his office to prosecute. Did not felt it rise to the level of use of public resources. felt that he would support a prosecution if the police department would have found something illegal happened. So, notwithstanding that status, I think we still have a situation where things were purchased without proper authorization. Systems were in place that probably didn't reflect the highest and best use of good business practices. And there was at least an appearance of favoritism in the way some things were done. And the problem with that is you have an independently elected individual who, except for certain sort of functions that tie his hands to the powers of the Board of Selectmen, does have some autonomy to conduct the business of the department until it puts the town in harm's way in terms of personnel policies, purchasing, or liability. And when you have to exercise your role within the realms of liability, personnel grievances, and budget, it creates a hostile climate, even with people that get along. And I think it's time to, in the process of looking at town government, to review whether that should be an appointed DPW head that works for the Board of Selectmen, or continues to be an independently elected local official. So I think I've thrown enough grenades into the fire for topics today. But those are the three issues that, and that's what people are talking about, that's what people are concerned about, and that's, I think, the biggest challenges we face. I know near to Jack's heart is I think it's, as much as I have supported a lot of the spending proposals that have gone before us, the lack of a capital plan and the lack of a long-term plan have resulted in us having to present by necessity some overrides to the town, and I think we also should be looking at what's more important. Clearly, we, at least personally, I look at we have, as of today, I don't know if the school committee voted to remove the $500,000 parking lot debt exclusion override, but thought that was important a month ago when we found out how much work needed to be done and resources needed to be raised, potentially remediate the PCB problem at the middle school, that may have dropped it to become less important. And I think the voters are going to have to make a decision next month if we pass the override, debt exclusion override for the PCB remediation at town meeting on Tuesday. Then you're going to have three items on the ballot. You're going to have a $500,000 capital needs request that was approved at town meeting for the school department for parking lots and for equipment. You have a $900,000 request for equipment and vehicles for the highway department, and you'll have a $1 million request for the cost related to remediation of PCBs at the middle school.